yeah, there will be no meet and greets of that sense and celebration at all. No one wants to see a president here in Buffalo for this reason. One of the darkest days in our city's history, the worst mass shooting in Buffalo's history, with 10 innocent lives taken far too soon. All of these people simply shopping at Tops on a Saturday afternoon, ranging in age from 32 to 86. The list of victims includes mothers, fathers, grandmothers, brothers, uncles, all of them innocently shopping at Tops, their lives taken by a self-proclaimed white supremacist who specifically chose that Tops to shoot people of color. And that is why we are seeing the president come to Buffalo today to honor the victims, to console and mourn with their families, and to make statements to the world about keeping, as he says, weapons of war off of our streets and calling on Congress to take action.
And as we see Air Force One approach, we should name the victims and the people who were impacted, the families, the loved ones. There were Aaron Salter Jr., Ruth Whitfield, Pearl Young, Catherine Massey, Hayward Patterson, Celestian Cheney, Roberta Drury, Geraldine Talley, Andre McNeil, and Margus Morrison. And those are the names we need to remember, and the people we need to remember as the president and the First Lady visit here in Western New York.
Many of those families have spoken with our reporters and crews at Channel 2 to share the stories of those victims, to make sure that our city and the world knows who they are and to remember their souls. But the visits that they will have with the president and the First Lady later today will be in private. Our cameras will not be there. Perhaps we'll learn their stories later and what the president said to them and whether they took any solace in their conversations with him or feel better after. But they are having private meetings with him today in order to tell them about the loved ones that they lost and perhaps to ask questions of him and to find some sort of solution. But we have seen time and time again mass shootings in our country, and even since this one on Saturday, there have been others, and it's something that the people in our community certainly want to be addressed since it's touched so close to home.
Yeah, and right now, once again, the 33 is shut to traffic as we wait for the door to open on Air Force One and the president and First Lady and the delegation to exit the plane. And there you see the first few people coming out, and we'll try to identify people as they step onto the tarmac here in Buffalo.
Air Force One touching down at 9:29 this morning after leaving from Joint Base Andrews shortly after 8:30. We see members of Secret Service obviously coming off of the plane right now, and we expect the president and the First Lady to come off of the plane soon. We do not expect them to speak with the media here, but they'll make their way to the Tops on Jefferson Avenue as their first stop, and then the Delevan-Grider Community Center after that for a meeting in private with the victims' families, with other dignitaries, with members of law enforcement. And then we're expecting the president to speak at 1 o'clock this afternoon.
Yeah, we'll just keep an eye on that. We saw the press corps and Secret Service exit the rear of the plane, and we're expecting to see the president, the First Lady, and the delegation that is traveling on Air Force One to depart very soon. Now, we should remind you some of the things that the president, and we hope to talk to the president. We're going to send out to Dave McKinley, who is on Cayuga Road just across the street from the airport. Dave?
Yeah, hi guys. So obviously you see right in front of you Air Force One and the start of the presidential motorcade. These include a limousine, a specially protected limousine, as I'm sure many have read and studied about. There are actually two of them here. And of course, there are a number of Secret Service vehicles with special protective gears. Now, heading out to the tarmac right now, we do see some local dignitaries. They include Buffalo Mayor Byron Brown and Governor Kathy Hochul is here. Sheriff John Garcia among those who are being led out to the tarmac now to greet the president. A number of other local law enforcers from state police. We do see some fire and emergency personnel as well who have been invited here to gather and await the president and the First Lady to step off of Air Force One as they get the folks assembled to greet him here. As you mentioned before, Pete, there have been several presidential visits to Buffalo. This one, though, a little different. Usually the presidents have come here. It's for a campaign-related event. It is for a rally of some sort, perhaps to talk about a program that they have in mind for the nation on the economy or some other special purpose. This one, unfortunately, in the wake of a terrible tragedy that does make a distinction between this presidential visit and all others. So they're assembling those dignitaries that we talked to you about. I also believe Congressman Brian Higgins among them, who are all set to greet President Biden and the First Lady here momentarily.
And if you are trying to travel in Buffalo right now, we do not know the exact route of the motorcade, but we can tell you that the inbound 33 is closed right now from Genesee Street to Goodell. And we do know that the motorcade now, because of that closure, it seems like that would be the route that the president will be making.
And there's President Biden and First Lady Dr. Jill Biden.
There they are. Yes, and the president and First Lady are now stepping off the plane and heading down the stairway to the tarmac to be greeted by local dignitaries.
We see the president hugging New York Governor Kathy Hochul, a Western New York native herself. Kathy Hochul now hugging Dr. Jill Biden. The president shaking the hand of
And
Mayor
also,
Byron Brown.
I see Senator Charles Schumer coming down the steps, along with Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, and as well as Congressman Brian Higgins. So this is what I mentioned before, that sometimes when a president visits a community, the senators who represent that particular state, perhaps a congressperson or two who represent the area, are invited to fly in with him on Air Force One so that they can be part of the ceremony and part of the official visit here. So you see the president now shaking hands with some of these folks who've gathered here. I believe he just shook hands. He is shaking hands now with, I believe that's Sheriff Garcia from my vantage point.
And a little bit more about the traffic. We are learning from Dave Cash and the NFTA
He's
that
going
all
to go right down the reception line, which includes Mayor Brown. And he is followed closely by, as we saw before, Kathy Hochul, our governor, Senator Kirsten Gillibrand standing next to her. Behind them, Congressman Higgins and Buffalo Mayor Byron Brown. From our vantage point, the president is behind the limousine. He may walk around to this side. There's a door being held open, but we don't know if he'll enter from this side or if we'll see a glimpse of the First Lady in front of our camera.
We're getting a different angle of the receiving line. Again, this is not going to be a long ceremony or any remarks made here at the airport. They're going to get into the motorcade, and we're seeing first responders right now being thanked by the president, presumably, and them in turn greeting the president and the First Lady as they visit Western New York in the wake of this horrible tragedy.
The 33 closed from Genesee Street to Goodell. All on-ramps and off-ramps for the inbound 33 are blocked off as well, including the 198 East. Traffic is being diverted to Main Street. All of this in anticipation of the presidential motorcade making its way to the scene of the mass shooting at Tops on Jefferson Avenue in just a few minutes. This is actually ahead of schedule by about 15 minutes. We were expecting Air Force One to touch down at approximately 9:45. It landed at 9:29 a.m. The president, and you see the First Lady right there, stepping off the plane just 3 minutes ago at 9:40 this morning, greeting first responders and dignitaries here in Buffalo. But again, on the plane with President Biden and the First Lady were Senator Charles Schumer, Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, and Congressman Brian Higgins on Air Force One.
And you can see Senator Schumer bending the ear of the president as he makes his way to the motorcade. And we should talk about the first responders here and how important it was to have them to greet the president, because Buffalo police, by all accounts, were on scene within 2 minutes of the shots being fired. Firefighters from the nearby firehouse just down Jefferson Avenue, just 1 block away from the shooting scene, were on scene treating the wounded and trying to, because we remember the 10 who were killed and the 3 survivors who were shot, but there was an entire grocery store full of people who have to be considered victims as well.
The alleged shooter in tactical gear coming here to Buffalo to carry out his attack. Now, one of the victims who lost his life in the attack was Aaron Salter of Lockport, a former Buffalo police officer who was serving as a security guard. He fired shots, according to police, and struck the shooter, but those bullets did not penetrate the shooter because they were stopped by the tactical gear he was wearing. And that is where the first responders and Buffalo police come into play in stopping the shooter, who allegedly had a gun up to his chin, prepared to take his own life. That was stopped by the first responders on the scene, presumably saving many, many more lives of the people who were there at the Tops. And according to the 180-page manifesto that the alleged shooter posted online, he said that he had other places where he was going to go after Tops. This was the first of several stops he was going to make to carry out other attacks. While 10 people is far too many lives lost in this tragedy, it could have been much, much worse had it not been for the valiant effort of Buffalo police, law enforcement, and heroes at the scene that day.
Yeah, the police commissioner mentioned there were at least 2 other targets that were identified in that manifesto, and the president actually recognizing the sacrifice and service of Aaron Salter in a ceremony yesterday in Washington. And as you can see, the motorcade is starting to roll. It will be making its first stop at the site of the tragedy on Saturday, the Top store on Jefferson Avenue. And it will be presumably, given the fact that the 33 has been closed for the better part of an hour now, we are assuming that that's the direction the motorcade will take as it makes its way downtown, visiting that, and then ultimately meeting with victims' families and several other people at the Delevan-Grider Community Center a little bit later on.